team at Crecimiento, and she's also a very well-established attorney on her own right in Web3 stuff and innovative technologies based between Lisbon and Buenos Aires. So yeah, I mean, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. There's a little bit of a time difference. It's 9 a.m. here in Argentina. And at Crecimiento, we are going through the kickoff a little bit, the second week of our pop-up city or LF. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we're going through, and with big excitement as well, is to show that beyond just being a pop-up city with LF, Crecimiento is a movement that intends to create change in the short, middle, and long run. My role in this has a lot to do with regulatory, and it has to do with analyzing the different possibilities that we have in relation to the objectives that are part of our core values. Some of those objectives have got to do with helping with the growth of adoption in Argentina of Web3, even though it's one of the countries, if not the country with the most amount of crypto adoption in the world. The second one has to do with creating an environment that is safe and rich for different projects related to new technologies to stay and grow and come, because it's one of the reasons that Argentina is struggling, because projects and talent flee the country because of the current political and economic conditions. And number three, beyond of trying to help those projects grow and to come, is also to provide the economic and regulatory stability that is required for them to actually survive. So these three objectives here at Crecimiento are very much interconnected, because if one goes well, it's going to immediately affect the other. More projects, more adoption, and therefore a more propitious space for that predictability and safety. Having in mind these objectives and given different options to consider for fixing, we said before, just consider, okay, it's a sandbox, it's a special economic zone, it's a tax-free zone, or a fourth option that maybe we're not seeing. We did step back and try to understand what are actually some of the main pain points that we're currently identifying. And most of them, not only for startups, but for entrepreneurs, for developers, for investors, all of them related to Web3, but beyond Web3 as well, have to do in Argentina with the lack of access to credit, to funding, taxes not only being high, but very unpredictable, the bureaucracy for the creation of companies, but also for them survival, and the lack of clarity on regulatory matters, not only on Web3 related topics like the concepts and the taxonomy of certain kind of ideas related to private offering, public offering, security tokens, like conversations that we tend to have very often in crypto, but also to other specific regulations and codes that we could go on specificity and the regulations related to it. So we understood we have these objectives with adoption, growth and investment of companies, and the predictability and stability that we want to provide them through time. And when I see this last little part, most of Argentinians laugh at me, because having the same price in milk more than 2 days even sounds crazy, or having a law that goes over a year without changes as well sounds kind of crazy, in relation to the pain points that inspired these objectives that again have to do with credit, have to do with funding, have to do with taxes, have to do with the lack of regulatory clarity, especially on Web3 and bureaucracy. And what we did with part of my team was to analyze what are the sources of these pains, what are the regulations and the regulators related to these pains, so we could identify them as blockers to make it faster. And we understood that it has to do with certain regulations on certain codes, like our capital markets code, labor code, and the regulators that in Argentina called CNV, which would be the Argentinian version of the SEC, the SEC, the Banco Central, the central bank in Argentina, WIF, which is the FAFT in Argentina in a national level, and how either their lack of clarity of concepts, their limitations on restrictions and operations, and also their lack of intent on helping Info and Expo have been constraining this kind of activities, which ends up being pretty ironic, because even though we have all of these limitations, Argentina ended up, or is right now, as I mentioned before, one of the countries with the most adoption on crypto in the world. And this is because we have created a community that had to find options that weren't there and create them from scratch. And that's why you guys are going to notice that some of the biggest crypto projects in the world have one or a couple of Argentinians walking around or coming around. around them. And that's something that makes me feel proud, because from crisis, we get to still thrive. And we're given 3 options, so I can go now, cut to the chase. We were given, consider a sandbox, consider a tax-free zone, consider a special economic zone. And our analysis was dual. It was to look what's happening outside of Argentina, so we could get inspired of what are the conditions that we want to imitate from this sandbox, or this special economic zone, or this tax-free zone, or this pop-up city outside that we know and has been proven to provide a positive income, not only in the Web3 ecosystem, but globally over the economy of the countries or the city that we're talking about. Beyond, of course, the wonderful connections and human beings that we get to interact with constantly. The serendipity of sitting down in a coffee shop, of course, and someone from a different project passing by, or someone you admire, and being able to have a conversation. So we made this analysis external on what's working outside, what's not working, what paths did they have to go through. And also, we took the time to identify which were the policymakers or the leaders that helped make this happen, or this project kind of grow and be useful. We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, for example, with Christian, because of the case of Prospera, which is one of our lead examples of what we would love Argentina to become and to provide the people and the community around it. So we had the external analysis, and we also had an internal analysis, because we had to understand in Argentina, not only understanding the idiocracy of our people and culturally how we react and why, what other sandbox, special economic zone, and tax-free zones were already created, whether they worked, whether they didn't work, why, what they wanted to imitate from them, what not, and especially coming from our legal framework, how they're implemented. Because even though we might see amazing examples outside of Argentina, for example, the different zones that we can see in Dubai as an example, the way that the legal frameworks and even constitutions that other countries might have might show that not that their conditions are unreachable, but the paths towards them might be different. So we had this external analysis, the internal analysis, and from them, we realized that when it comes to sandbox, there's only been one related to innovation in a national level, but does not include the 3 regulators that we realized were part of the sources of the pain points. And we wanted them to become part of the sources of the change and of the hope that it could happen, because they're the ones that would implement it and enable us to move forward. And we did the same with special economic zone and tax-free zone. When it comes to sandbox, we realized that we were new, that we needed to cooperate and arrange a way of collaborating with other entities with the same values, or at least with the same purposes that we were having. And for the last couple of years, the Argentine FinTech Chamber had already been working towards the possibility of a sandbox in Argentina with similar objectives. We started working with them with this drafting, with the fear, and we're not going to lie, of all of these efforts of external analysis and talking with experts and talking as well with whoever would have experience on this matter, to only be an academic exercise. That was our biggest fear, to say, okay, put this together. These are the conditions that we think would be awesome. What do we do with this piece of paper? And because of this drafting and working of hours and weeks between our group of lawyers and policymakers in Crecimiento, and as well with the CAF, the Argentine FinTech Chamber, and the conversations that we had already started with them and through them with CNV, again, that's like the Argentina SEC and Central Bank, we were able to get to an agreement. And this agreement was that last week we were given 10 days to propose a sandbox to them, a multi-agency sandbox that would be CNB, Central Bank, and WIF, which would be, as I mentioned, the Argentinian FAFT, mostly related to compliance. So they could review it, we would create a technical table, and then it could pass through the executive power in a faster pace than just having a political party apply with the law to the Congress. And we're very excited about this. In 15 minutes, we are having a meeting for the second draft analysis, and we're planning to present it officially by beginnings of next week. That has to do with the possibility or the reality that's becoming on the first step of this roadmap, that we understand is going to be different milestones until the reaching of a special economic zone here in Argentina. So the different milestones, we're still setting them up on paper. The one that we're considering the most important to have a relevant change in our country is the special economic zone that can either be created by a pact between two provinces and then for them to go to Congress, or a new law in a pact with the province or the state that it's okay with it. And we understand that this kind of arrangement needs a lot of thought, because we're not just talking about the national level decision, but one specific state that would put the land or the specific place to make this happen. So for that moment where we would present it over Congress, we are working on the milestones that would be around them, with a happy kickoff of Aleph, and through the month of Aleph, the presentation of the sandbox. That would be around Tuesday. This analysis that we're doing, and the collaborations that we're having, and the conversations of experts that we're as well having, and the doubts and the fears are being supported, and they're being done with the help of a large group of people from different backgrounds, and also as well from different parts of the world. Most of our team, of course, is Argentinian. Working with a purpose makes work not feel like work, makes it feel like passion. And it's been a very long time since Argentina, I would say since the 1930s or 40s, that we're starting to feel united again because of something that we call la grieta, something that divided us politically. And I like to make this comment that people take as a joke, that it had been a long time as well, until the World Cup, that the country had not felt proud to be Argentinian, but also to be one and united to push forward a positive change for all of us. And at Crecimiento, this is a kind of energy that we're feeling, especially now in the middle of Aleph, and especially now in the middle of the drafting of the sandbox, that stopped being just an academic exercise, but now an actual proposition to work with the regulators, and the first step and the first milestone of many, until we can actually propose a special economic zone. We do know that this is not going to be the last pop-up city that we're going to make, because you guys are at ZuVillage, you understand the positive change and the impact that it brings. And this is a little bit of a preview of how we're going to be interacting and growing from this very moment. And therefore, if there's any questions, I could say thank you so much, Christian, for giving me the space to present what's going on right now, and also to invite any of you that would like to come to Regulation Day. There's going to be an interconnection between the public and the private sector next week in Argentina, and to present a little bit more their perspective as regulators on how they see this.
Thank you, Mili, and congratulations on everything. I couldn't be happier for you and for the team that has been working so hard. We are mindful that you have this upcoming meeting, so maybe we can take just a couple minutes if somebody has a question about everything that's going on down there.
I cannot hear, I'm sorry.
Yes, so yeah, it feels like it has been rather smooth sailing compared to, other efforts in other places. So if you could share some of the lessons, the things that you feel that went very well in this process, even if it's still early stages, right?
What I feel went very well is that in this particular case in Argentina, the community was already there. The community was already vibrant, and the community was already pushing for a change even before the necessity of Web3. So some projects, when they start on a private matter, most of the times, they know that they start building a product and they start bringing an idea, and then they need to start creating a community. This is not a product, of course. This is not just a random kind of set of strategies. This is a community that already exists, that got together and started organizing themselves to make this change. So I believe that the kickoff of this smooth and fast transition until this first milestone that had taken years before was that the community was already there and hoping to make this change, and we got organized, and that's what made the difference.
Nico, you had a question.
Yeah. Hey, Mili, how's it going?
Hi.
I had a question about, so I was discussing here with someone that said, because there's the discussion about if we can create a special economic zone here in Georgia as well. And someone told me that he was a bit skeptical about it happening because it would be unconstitutional. So you would need to change the constitution in order to do that. I was wondering, like, what's the case in Argentina, and is there anything more hopeful in there that would allow for that to happen?
That's a good question. And I remember having this conversation with Christian as well and with my team. From a legal perspective, constitutions they vary around the world and how flexible they are. You have constitutions that are a lot more flexible to change. You have middle term that you can just do it with a normal law, not special quorum or amount of voting. You have middle terms where you need maybe a special quorum. And then you have more rigid constitutions that you need a lot of change from different powers beyond the special quorum. Argentina is a little bit between the middle point and a rigid point. And historically, our constitution has been changed very few times. That doesn't mean that it cannot be done or that the change of the constitution is an absolute necessity. Because, for example, our constitution, even if it's harder to change, it already provides a specific article, which is Article 124 of our constitution, that enables one or two states to propose the creation of a special economic zone as a right. So this could be a possibility that would anchor the justification of a new special economic zone to be created as one of the examples that could be taken. What we do believe is that whatever path we choose to take, either a specific law referring to only one state or two states creating a pact and then proposing it in Congress, or another option that could be considered, for example, with a new regulation that's coming, one of them is called Ley Bases, that could be considered as a special economic zone, de hecho, as a fact, depending on how the business model would be proposed, is that it's feasible. It's a matter of understanding which is the way that would be less resource consuming, considering the political economy around, so it can be passed. But that's a good point. So to know that the different kinds of constitution, and depending how flexible they are, whether it's a direct path or the ones around it.
Oh, thanks.
Hope it helped.
All right. If there's nothing else, thank you, Mili, and best of luck with everything, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, guys. It's been a pleasure. Hope to meet you in person soon.